Shipmates, C&O Guild Day here with my wife Linda. During Hispanic Heritage Month, we celebrate the achievements of Hispanic Americans and recognize their countless contributions to our Navy and to our nation.
Hispanic Americans are part of the very fabric of our Navy and are a vital component of every command, whether at sea or on shore as an active, reserve, or civilian sailor.
Throughout our Navy's nearly 245-year history, generations of Hispanic Americans have played a vital role in making our Navy and our nation strong. And today, they are our largest minority group in our Navy, with approximately 60,000 active and reserve sailors who serve throughout the fleet.
Hispanic sailors have a proud tradition and heritage of service, and their stories represent a steadfast commitment to the Navy's core values of honor, courage, and commitment.
Hispanic Americans like Admiral David Farragut, Rear Admiral Cristina Alvarado, and MCPON Joe Campa have left an indelible mark on our Navy and exemplify the innovative spirit of our sailors.
A todos nuestros marineros hispanos, pasados, presentes y futuros. Muchas gracias.
Well said, Linda. Thank you, shipmates, and we'll see you in the fleet.
A series of U.S. Navy carrier raids against the Japanese, climaxed by the Halsey Doolittle raid, was the catalyst Yamamoto needed. Yamamoto wanted to finish what he had begun at Pearl Harbor, and would use the assault on Midway to draw out the Pacific Fleet and its aircraft carriers. The battle plan was to consist of 3 parts. The strike force, commanded by Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, was to come from the north and destroy the defenses on the island. Then the occupation force, commanded by Vice Admiral Nobutake Kondo, was to capture and occupy the island. Finally, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto and his fleet would defend the island from a counterattack. Due to the efforts of the U.S. Navy Cryptanalytic Team led by Lieutenant Commander Joseph Rochefort, the U.S. Navy learned of the plan and were able to prepare for the attack. Task Force 16 departs Hawaii on May 27th, and after repairs to make USS Yorktown seaworthy, Task Force 17 departs on the 30th. They head 350 miles northeast of Midway to wait for the incoming attack. Search planes are launched to scan the area in order to detect the Japanese fleet before they reach a striking distance of 200 nautical miles. June 3rd, a Navy patrol plane reports. Main body bearing 261 degrees, distance 700 miles. 6 large ships in column. 9 B-17s launch at 12:30 to attack the sighted ships. They drop their bombs, but little to no damage was incurred. Later that evening, 4 Navy PBYs loaded with torpedoes attack the Japanese and score a hit on an oiler. June 4th, 05:45. A patrol plane reports. Many planes heading Midway, bearing 320 degrees. And another report. 2 carriers and main body of ships, carriers in front, course 135 degrees. The U.S. Marine Fighting Squadron, consisting of only 27 planes, engages the bombers. In spite of heavy anti-aircraft fire, the Japanese continued their run, and at 0630 they dropped bombs along the north side of Eastern Island, and in the hangar and barracks area on Sand Island. The powerhouse on Eastern Island and the oil tanks on Sand Island were their primary targets. As the Japanese attack was ending, the first U.S. bombers from Midway, 6 TBFs and 4 B-26s, find their targets. 16 SBDs dive through the clouds, emerging to encounter heavy anti-aircraft fire from Hiryu. As the SBDs exit, the B-17s start their attack, going after Soryu, Hiryu, and Akagi. During this attack, Nautilus appears, putting even more pressure on the Japanese Navy. She fires off 1 torpedo, which misses. A few minutes later, 11 SBTU dive bombers start their attack, but were engaged by a large number of Japanese fighters, forcing them to give up their attack on the carrier and choose a battleship as their target instead. Nagumo receives a report that the U.S. have at least 1 carrier in the area. The U.S. attacks didn't inflict any damage, but it prevented the Japanese from building a coordinated attack. While the planes from Enterprise head southwest, the Hornets head west. With no contact, the Hornets torpedo squadron, led by Lieutenant Commander John C. Waldron, broke off and turned south. 15 of Hornets torpedo squadron target, Soryu. VT-6 arrived before the rest of the Enterprise group. They target Kagai 0938 and fire off some torpedoes. 12 torpedo bombers from Yorktown attack Hiryu but score no hits. In an almost coordinated attack, 17 SPDs from Yorktown's BB-3 begin their attack and target Soryu, scoring 3 hits, causing fires in all 3 hangars. When the Enterprise group arrives, they don't see any Japanese carriers. Lieutenant Commander C. Wade McCluskey spots the Japanese destroyer Arashi, and making the most important decision of the entire action, turns his whole group north. When McCluskey and the Enterprise bombers arrive, they attack Kaga, scoring 5 direct hits and setting the carrier ablaze. VB-6's Dick Best and 2 wingmen turn their attack on Akagi. With one lucky shot, a bomb sliced through the flight deck and exploded in the upper hangar, in the midst of the aircraft there. Shortly after, the carrier bursts into flames. 3 carriers are disabled, but the last carrier escapes undamaged, so Yorktown sends out 10 scouts from BB-5 to search for it. At 11:52, radar picked up a large number of planes heading for Yorktown. They quickly cut down the attackers, but 7 bombers broke through, only to meet a formidable screen of anti-aircraft fire. Despite this, 3 hits had been made on Yorktown. Rear Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher moves to the Astoria and will soon turn over command to Rear Admiral Spruance. Damage to the Yorktown proved not to be serious, and repairs were made quickly. The hole in the flight deck was covered in less than half an hour. By 1420, the 10 bombers of VB-5 that Yorktown sent out earlier find the last Japanese carrier. U.S. fighters are launched from Yorktown, joined by fighters from TF-16, shoot down several of the torpedo planes before the ships open fire. Of the planes that got past, 4 were able to drop their torpedoes. 2 of these the Yorktown avoided by skillful maneuvering. 2 others, however, could not be avoided, and they caught her amidships on the port side. With the Yorktown listing heavily to port, the orders were given to abandon ship. At 15:30, the Enterprise began launching an attack group of 26 SPDs that include orphans from the Yorktown. 30 minutes later, the Hornet began launching a squadron of 16 SPDs. The Enterprise squadron sighted the Japanese force at 1650. They dove in from the sun and scored 4 direct hits on Hiryu, which was soon a mass of flames. With the bombing of the 4th Japanese carrier, the U.S. had won control of the air. The Battle of Midway was essentially a victory of intelligence, but the U.S. forces also needed to meet the enemy with heroism and devotion to duty. This would carry the day and allowed them to write what Admiral Nimitz called a glorious page in our history.
My name is Captain J.J. Cummings, the commanding officer of mighty warship USS Gerald Ford. These are incredibly challenging times right now as our nation battles and attempts to defeat the hidden enemy, the coronavirus. That's changed the way we do business and the way we work. As a result of that, we can't think into our ship for tours or visits. So, in true Navy fashion, we're going to bring the ship to you via these virtual tours in a series called The House of Wolverine. In this series, we're going to show you the very unique systems and the advances in our ship, like EMALS, electromagnetic aircraft launch system, our mantle rescue gear system, our unique flight deck design, our plasma arc waste destruction system, and how we move in stores, for example. We're also going to show you how sailors work on our ship, the flight deck control, up in the tower, up in the forecastle below decks. We hope you take this opportunity to gain awareness to our ship, the technology on it, the naval sea service, and the hard work of some of the finest young men and women our nation has to offer, our sailors. We will not let coronavirus keep us down because we are Warship 78.
The mission of Carrier Strike Group 15 is to mentor, train, and assess Pacific Fleet Carrier Strike Groups, Amphibious Readiness Groups, Expeditionary Strike Groups, Surface Action Groups, and independent deploying ships that are going to operate in the Pacific Fleet and in the Indian Ocean. Carrier Strike Group 15 is responsible for delivering the integrated phase of training in the Fleet Response Training Plan. So we are at the culmination of a cycle of training that occurs for operating forces. At first in the classroom, but ultimately at sea in a month-long live virtual and constructive exercise. Our goal ultimately is to produce a realistic operating environment that our naval forces are going to see when they deploy to forward operating areas. Carrier Strike Group 15 determines the training requirements first by looking at the required operational capabilities for the units that we mentor, train, and assess. We build off those basic requirements through annual training inputs from the numbered fleet commanders. That keeps us relevant. It makes sure that the training we're delivering through each training cycle reflects the latest operating environments that they'll be operating in based upon the forward deployed commanders and what they're seeing there. Finally, we take feedback from strike groups that have been through the training process and then have deployed. So when we conclude the training cycle, that's not the end of it for us. We keep an open door and an open line of communication with the forces that we have just trained and have just certified. I get excited when I talk about fleet sailors. Throughout all of that, including COVID, the American sailor has been absolutely focused on their mission. Individuals on the deck plate have been completely focused on their training requirements. They've taken that training on board, and then they formed very coherent teams in terms of the tactical watch teams and the crews and the squadrons that are going to operate going forward. They've done so with a tremendous sense of enthusiasm and excitement about their opportunity to carry through on their mission. So I've been talking about Carrier Strike Group 15, but I think it's important to note that we are an important part of a larger team that builds fleet readiness. In that way, we're trying to increase the alignment and increase the efficiency of the training that we deliver to the fleet. It's great to be part of that team.